if you don't have a supply chain that's resilient, or taking the right sustainability actions, what we're seeing with a lot of these programs today, George, is it raises a little bit of a red flag from investors on your company as well. Like, do they really have a sound
Hmm.
strategy and a sound structure in place that they're not really
Hmm.
identifying these risks within their supply chain from a supply and quality perspective?
Greetings and welcome to the Ojo-Yoshida Report podcast and our Dig Deeper edition. I'm George Leopold. Our guest is Dave Rimkus. He's the Associate Director of Supply Chain Renewables at Schneider Electric. Welcome, Dave.
Thanks, George. Thank you for having me.
So, Dave, tell us first a little bit about Schneider Electric, the company's sort of global footprint, and how the company fits into this sustainable manufacturing initiative.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, George. Appreciate that. So, Schneider's in a very unique opportunity here, right? With a unique market in front of them. So a couple of reasons why, right? I mean, our sustainability business, we literally have, from an advisory perspective, we have one of the top sustainability programs and companies in the world, right? For large multinationals. Even embedded within that around renewables, we have a renewable energy carbon advisory service, which is the number one worldwide leader from an advisory perspective and virtual power purchase agreements and EACs, on-site solar DER. So we are number one in the world as far as really helping companies on their renewable energy journey, right? Outside of the larger sustainability business. And then when we start talking about these supply chain programs, right, within sustainability, we're doing this with our own program today on zero carbon. We're helping our suppliers decarbonize. And that zero carbon program is really an industry leading program. And that's really helped Schneider become the top supply chain company in the world by
Mhm.
Gartner. We just moved to number one. So you really partner Schneider being the top supply chain company, one of the top sustainability companies in the world. And then even within sustainability, the renewable energy carbon advisory team that we have is number one globally. You really have a unique opportunity here, working with Schneider, working within these programs to really drive scalable impact within our supply chains, where majority of our emissions fall around scope three, right?
Mhm.
Schneider
Mhm.
itself has 99.6 of their scope three or of their emissions within scope three.
Okay.
So it's a very unique opportunity to take the experts that we have at Schneider and partner with these large industry consortiums and drive scalable impact.
So our dig deeper topic today is the third leg of the sustainability triad, which is known as scope three. I think most people sort of understand how scope one, scope two work, the fabs generating greenhouse gases, and two covers sort of the use, if available, of renewable resources. But I thought first we should probably define what's meant by scope three in the context of sustainable chip manufacturing. And sort of the textbook definition is scope three encompasses emissions that are not produced by the manufacturer itself, and they're not the result of activities from assets owned or controlled by the company, but those that are indirectly responsible for up and down the supply chain. And I guess an example would be if you buy, use, and dispose of a product, say, for example, you upgrade your smartphone, what happens to that old smartphone? So that's the textbook definition. Dave, how does Schneider define and implement scope three?
Yeah, definitely. To keep it very simple, very high level, anything outside your four walls of operations, right, is an easy way to look at it. We talk about supply and that being upstream, right? So today we'll talk a little bit about programs that address the supply chain or the upstream piece, but also we can encompass value chain, and that's also the downstream piece, end of life. So there's multiple different buckets, both upstream before that product gets into your operation as you add value, and then as we move downstream, as you drive it more towards a consumer. Schneider specifically, majority of our emissions is found within our scope three. So, and we see that with multiple large multinational companies around the world.
Mhm. Okay. So earlier this year, Schneider and partners Intel and Applied Materials announced the Catalyst program to, quote, decarbonize, close quote, the semiconductor supply chain by boosting access to renewables. Tell us more about that effort and what progress can you report?
Really, when we talk about the Catalyze program, it's a collaborative effort with leading semiconductor companies enabled by Schneider Electric to drive supply chain decarbonization through the acceleration of renewable energy adoption, right? So really what we're doing here is we're partnering with the large multinational companies within the semiconductor arena, working with their suppliers and really helping educate and engage them around renewable energy opportunities for their operations.
Mm-hmm.
So the point here is, George, really, it's funny because we want to help these large companies reduce their scope three, but we have to partner with their upstream supply partners in that purchase, service, and goods bucket, and we really educate and engage them around reducing their own scope two. So really powerful program that can really scale very quickly and drive large impact throughout the semiconductor industry.
Okay, yeah. But previous folks we've had on the podcast have emphasized transparency and collaboration. So it sounds like that's a big part of this.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's one of those things. Transparency is key. Like a lot of companies really want data they can trust, transparent data, right? And really understanding what's happening within their supply chains. A lot of companies today have spend visibility, right? But really don't understand what actions are being taken from a sustainability perspective within their supply base. So this program is really drives transparency within a supply chain, but really breaking down the barriers within competition and collaborating, right? A lot of these companies within Catalyze do use the same suppliers and buy from the same, supply chains. So
Okay.
as we help those supply chains, we really can, I would say, impact the overall scope three for the semiconductor industry as we help each and every one of these suppliers take action.
Yeah, it's if you know who the suppliers are, that
Yeah,
seems like a good way to scale an effort like this.
absolutely.
So we note that scope one and scope two emissions represent about 65% of total greenhouse gases generated by wafer fabs. And so scope three upstream emission seems to be the way to close the gap to get to net zero. But one of the problems we've read about is that the scope three upstream emissions are often fragmented across perhaps potentially hundreds of suppliers and thousands of materials. How does a project like Catalyze address that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So really kind of getting back to the basics here. Applied Materials and Intel really partnered with Schneider to be really kind of the leaders here, right? To help drive and take a leadership position within sustainability within this market, right? And what we really depend on here is there's a digitization piece that we have, and it's really within our Zygo platform. So within our Zygo platform, we are actually working now to work with both Intel and Applied Materials, and we're designing this program to onboard their suppliers into a supplier platform around engagement, around education. We're learning
Mhm.
about these suppliers. We're understanding, have you bought renewables before? What's your electricity load look like? What region do you operate in today? Where is there maturity around renewables? And then we really pinpoint that maturity, get better information about them, and then have targeted training and education and engagement for those suppliers, understanding where their maturity is at and where they're located, to give them renewable energy opportunities to really take their own action and drive that action. These companies are all over the board around scope one, scope two, scope three. What does it mean? How do I get there? How do I meet my client's need? So we really take a stance here, design these programs, engage with these suppliers, have a common approach with them and a common communication with them and streamline that communication with them, and then start educating them what is really necessary for them based on their load and region and where it's actually going to be actionable for them to drive impact.
Mhm, mhm. So I assume that the sort of the sweet spot here as you work with chip makers is raw materials like chemicals, wafers, and gases. I think those account for like two-thirds of upstream emissions. So, what do you think are the biggest opportunity gains here in terms of sustainability? Is it waste reduction, recycling, alternative materials, or things like adjusting to sustainable product specifications?
Yeah, I think great question. I think when you talk about supply chain decarbonization, there's multiple off-ramps and multiple opportunities that we can take, whether it be scope one abatement, circularity, electrification, efficiency. This specific catalyzed program is really focused around renewable energy and helping these suppliers take renewable energy actions. So
Mm-hmm.
we're doing this a ton today. Schneider is really partnering. One example that is similar to Catalyze is Energize, right? So we're doing the same thing within the pharmaceutical sector. It's a little bit more mature. That program has been around for a couple of years, but we're really focused on helping these small, medium-sized companies take renewable energy action, right? So you may not be large enough as a small, medium-sized company to really do your own, virtual power purchase agreement. You've got to have a significant electrical load to do that, right?
Right.
So what we've done within that program and plan to do in this program is really developing supplier cohorts, right, around, that have not as large load, that they don't have access to renewable energy opportunities that a larger company would have. So we really pool these resources together, develop cohorts around them, take them to market, and really provide them different opportunities that they wouldn't have else had if they weren't in a cohort or weren't put into a program or participating in programs such as Catalyze. So we
Mm-hmm.
really focused on that scope two piece within the supply base.
Yeah, right, right. So, I'd be interested in your perspective in terms of access to renewable energy sources. It seems to be uh, plentiful in Europe and in North America, but less so in Asia. Are you dealing with any Asian customers, and where does that stand? What's the
Yeah, I think
status?
it's a great question, and that's what the beauty about these programs is. We really take a look at where your spend is segmented, where your emissions are falling based on region
Mhm.
and based on concentration. And then what kind of is a nice advantage here is within these programs, George, we have local experts within Schneider, right? And within our sustainability business, within our renewable energy business, these local experts are pulled in based on that spend concentration, and they actually come in and work and train and engage with our suppliers based in those specific regions, right? So,
Mhm.
yeah, we even have headwinds today in the BPPA market, right, in the US. And we're focused on LATAM, we're focused on Europe, AIB, Eastern Europe. Really, no two APAC obviously, no two supply chains are the same. And very few of these suppliers are actually located in the US or, Western Europe. So being able to have a large Schneider global footprint, having the local experts, and it really, as we get into the design phase, specifically within Catalyze here, of understanding where that spends at, pulling
Mhm.
those experts in to educate and engage around the opportunities for renewable energies within that area based on load and region.
Mhm. Yeah, and as we know, it looks like some of that manufacturing in Asia may eventually come back. Your partner Intel is building a fab in Ohio. They may do something in Germany pretty soon. TSMC looks like it's going to do things in
Yeah.
Europe. So you're sort of building I guess a track record now for when some of this chip manufacturing is reshored to North America and Europe.
You know, yeah, you hit on a point there. So, my background, George, before joining the renewables team here was really had about a decade and a half of supply chain, right? Mainly procurement, supplier development, manufacturing operations, really working with these small, medium-sized companies, understanding where to manufacture and how to manufacture, at a competitive level.
Mhm.
Really worked through COVID with Schneider on this as well. So if you take a look at the supply chain piece,
Mhm.
there is a lot of reshoring going on, right? Reducing risk, reducing those supply chains and touch points. So we are seeing a little bit of movement, and that's what's beautiful about this program. As Schneider being the global worldwide leader in PPA, advisory services,
Mhm.
is if we're moving things, no two supply chains are the same. They're dynamic. They're always changing. We may pivot. Hey, year one and year two, maybe APAC. Year three, year four within these programs may be closer, of a reshoring piece to North America, kind of like what we're seeing. So the ability to pivot, the ability to pull in experts, and to be able to have kind of lean on our credibility as being that top advisor, we get our top advisor experts training and engaging these specific suppliers in these regions, which is extremely powerful in helping them increase their maturity.
Yeah, right. I think post-pandemic, everybody now appreciates the importance of resilient supply chains,
Yeah.
and now I think that some of those lessons are being implemented now, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't have a supply chain that's resilient, or taking the right sustainability actions, what we're seeing with a lot of these programs today, George, is it raises a little bit of a red flag from investors on your company as well. Like, do they really have a sound
Hmm.
strategy and a sound structure in place that they're not really
Hmm.
identifying these risks within their supply chain from a supply and quality perspective? And how does that translate to sustainability, right? How can we really start telling a sustainability story and understanding our supply chain that lets our clients know that we're taking this very seriously and we identify and understand where the risk is in our supply chains and we're helping them decarbonize their operations at the same time as well. So it kind of goes hand in hand.
Right, right. So we talked about sort of a lot of the upstream issues. What about the downstream part of this? What opportunities did you see in things like, say, smart grid technologies that would help increase use of renewable energy sources?
Yeah, I mean, I think the program that we have today are mainly focused upstream. We are moving into that value chain piece,
Hmm.
right? So I think it's that question. I think we probably got to more towards some of our internal experts that focus on that. But I will say it's a great question because that scope is expanding pretty quickly just outside of the upstream purchase service and goods buckets of really how do we handle end of life and how we become more efficient and effective and resourceful for our clients.
Okay. So we interviewed the one of the leaders of the Semiconductor Climate Consortium
Yeah.
that's being spearheaded by SEMI, the industry group SEMI. Is Schneider a member, and if so, what role do you hope to play?
Wow, I'll tell you that both semi and semiconductor climate consortium have been absolutely integral in this development of Catalyze, right? So
Hmm.
they were announced last year at COP, and in 1 year anniversary now we have this program which has been really a focus of that organization. So with their help, it's really been able to help grow this specific Catalyze program. We've started with two partnering and with them, and now we're moving it to five, maybe six companies have joined this consortium. So it's gaining momentum. It's becoming more of a movement in the market. We had the
Hmm.
same thing with Energize, where we started with three, then it went to 10, and Energize from the farmer perspective now has 19,
Hmm.
right? And 100, well over 500 deeply engaged suppliers. So we would expect the same thing with Catalyze that could
Hmm.
easily reach to that level. And it doesn't become a program anymore, George. It really becomes a movement to
Hmm.
really take sustainable action around renewables, within the semiconductor space. And
Yeah.
you can move that downstream as well to the value chain, right? There's really
Hmm.
no limit. As we're
Hmm.
breaking down the barriers, driving collaboration, really increasing that funnel to drive awareness, to drive maturity, and drive engagement within the suppliers, really using that Zygo platform around Zygo Hub to educate. And then we have multiple off ramps within Zygo to help them take action as well around decarbonization.
Hmm. So I guess the mission here is to convince potential customers and suppliers and partners that this is a asset, not just a cost, right? That
That's that.
that there's a return on the investment.
I will tell you that absolutely key. We really want to, I would say a few of the barriers when working with small and medium-sized companies is cost, right? I mean,
Yes.
cost, resources, no doubt about it.
Hmm.
A lot of the companies that we're working with today do not have sustainability teams. They don't have sustainable procurement teams. We're working with facilities managers. We're working with potentially indirect buyers in the procurement organization
Hmm.
that may not know that sustainability journey or have the opportunity to learn about scope one, scope two. So these types of programs really are free to suppliers or the small and medium-sized companies around
Hmm.
education, around engagement. And then what we also do within the programs is not only do we educate the suppliers of these large multinationals, but what we found specifically through Energize and through other programs, we take a step back and we start educating the procurement organizations like for Intel and Applied Materials, educating them about the program, about end in mind, how do we do this and how do we get there on our journey? because those are really the organizations within the category leads that are on the front lines talking to these suppliers. And we got to be very consistent about the approach, streamline that communication. Suppliers are very busy. We need to be very, very focused on what we explain and show them. And as we walk them down this journey, so we educate the procurement individuals, and then we really start launching into the suppliers with that common thread, that common message. And I'll tell you, George, when we talk about the industry consortiums that we're talking about here, some of these clients that we work with today on a small and medium size are like, Dave, I've got 40 to 60 different clients asking me this per year about
Mm-hmm.
my decarbonizing my operations around scope one, scope two. The survey fatigue is real. They don't have the resources to answer. They don't have the education or the maturity to answer. So this program really brings that all together of educating, engaging, scoping, but also streamlining that communication through a large number of large multinationals. So it's just one main channel to the suppliers.
Yeah, and it sounds like the key players, Intel, Applied Materials, so forth, are sort of driving this
Yeah,
requirement down to the supplier level, and that's probably how you're going to scale it, right?
absolutely. And there's more to come, right? There's many more. So you'll hear in the news more of more and more companies that will be joining, and we're really open to more. So
Mm-hmm.
within these programs, much like Energize, going to 19, we're not stopping at 19. To be completely transparent, we want to do this for the entire pharma industry. There's other industries doing the same thing with programs. We literally have a unique opportunity here to drive scalable impact, George, within our supply base, but
Mm-hmm.
really begin to start back building that multi-tiered scope three approach with education, engagement. And then once they have that, they off ramp and start taking action, right? And start capturing that action to really improve multi-tiers within these different industries.
All right. Dave Rimkus is the Associate Director of Supply Chain Renewables at Schneider Electric. Dave, thanks for your time. This was very illuminating, and good luck with your sustainable manufacturing efforts.
Thank you very much. And George, one more thing.
Okay,
One more thing, my friend. I would,
absolutely. Go
a
ahead.
piece of advice for companies out there today, large multinationals and small and medium-sized businesses is don't be afraid to start. Don't be afraid to say what you don't know. I mean, there's people out there to help, but everyone must start the process now, right?
Okay.
It's not
All right.
you know, one thing and be done. It's a journey. And to help meet the goals we have coming upon us of 2030 and driving real impact, we got to start having a conversation around education and engagement now. So don't be afraid to start. Okay.
Okay. Let's do it. The world is getting warm and we got to act, right?
You got it, my friend.
Yep. All right. Dave Rimkus, again, thanks for your time.
Thanks, George. Appreciate it.
Ojo-Yoshida Report wishes to thank our sponsor. Members of SEMI are leading the industry group's Semiconductor Climate Consortium in its quest to accelerate the efforts to achieve net zero carbon emissions for the global semiconductor industry, using baselining and road mapping techniques or reporting guidance and sharing best practices. Learn more and get involved at semi.org.